Canto 1. The patron of true holiness foul error doth defeat, hypocrisy him to entrap doth to his home entreat. I. A gentle knight degrees was pricking on the plain, icklad in mighty arms and silver shielda, wherein old dints of deep wounds did remain, the cruel marks of many a blouty fielda, yet arms till that time did he never wield. His angry steed did chide his foaming bit, as much disdaining to the curb to yield, full jolly knight he seemed, and fair did sit, as one for knightly jousts and fierce encounters fit. 2. And on his breast a blouty cross he bore, the dear remembrance of his dying lord, for whose sweet sake that glorious badge he wore, and dead as living ever him adore 500. Upon his shield the like was also score 500, for sovereign hope, degrees which in his help he had, right faithful true he was in deed and word. But of his cheer did seem too solemnly sad, yet nothing did he dread, but ever was idrad. 3. Upon a great adventure he was bond, that greatest Gloriana degrees to him gave, that greatest glorious Queen of Faeryland, to win him worship, and her grace to have, which of all earthly things he most did crave, and ever as he rode, his heart did earn to prove his puissance in battle brave upon his foe, and his new force to learn upon his foe, a dragon degrees horrible and stern. 4. A lovely lady degrees rode him fair beside, upon a lowly assem more white than snow, yet she much whiter, but the same did hide under a veil, that wimpled was full low. And over all a blacky stole she did throw, as one that inly mourned. So was she sad, and heavy sat upon her palfrey slow, seemed in heart some hidden care she had, and by her in a line a milk-white lamb she lad. 5. So pure and innocent, as that same lamb she was in life and every virtuous lore, and by descent from royal lineage came of ancient kings and queens, that had of yore their scepters stretched from east to western shore, and all the world in their subjection held, till that infernal fiend with foul uproar forewested all their land, and them expelled, whom to avenge she had this night from far compelled. 6. Behind her far away a dwarf degrees did lag, that lacy seemed in being everlast, or wearied with bearing of her bag of needments at his backy. Thus as they passed, the day with clouds was sudden overcast, and angry Jove and hideous storm of rain did pour into his lemon's lap so fast, that every wight to shroud it did constrain, and this fair couple eke to shroud themselves were fain. 7. Enforced to seek some covert nigh at hand, a shady grove degrees not far away they spied, that promised eyed the tempest to withstand, whose lofty trees icklad with summer's pride did spread so broad, that heaven's light did hide, not perceivable with power of any star, and all within were paths and alleys wide, with footing worn and leading inward far, fair harbor that them seems, so in they entered are. 8. And forth they pass, with pleasure forward led, joying to hear the birds' sweet harmony, which therein shrouded from the tempest dread, seemed in their song to scorn the cruel sky. Much can they praise the trees so straight and high. The sailing pine degrees the cedar proud and tall, the vine prop elmy, the poplar never dry, degrees the builder oak, degrees sole king of forests all, the aspen good for staves, the cypress funeral. 9. The laurel degrees mead of mighty conquerors and poets sage, the fir that weepeth still degrees the willow degrees worn of forlorn paramours, the yew degrees obedient to the bender's will, the birch for shafts, the sallow for the mill, the myrrh degrees sweet bleeding in the bitter wound, the warlike beech degrees the ash for nothing ill degrees the fruitful olive, and the plaiting round, the carver home, degrees the maple sealdom inward sound. 10. Led with delight they thus beguile the way, until the blustering storm is overblown, when weening to return whence they did stray, they cannot find that path which first was shown, but wander to and fro in ways unknown, furthest from end then when they nearest ween, that makes them doubt their wits be not their own. So many paths, so many turnings seen, that which of them to take, in diverse doubt they been. 11. At last resolving forward still to fare, till that some end they find or in or out, that path they take, that beaten seemed most bare, and like to lead the labyrinth about, which, when by tract they hunted, had throughout. At length it brought them to a hollow cave amid the thickest woods. The champion stout eftsoons dismounted from his courser brave, and to the dwarf a while his needless spear he gave. 12. Be well aware, quoth then that lady milde, least sudden mischief ye too rash provoke, the danger hid, the place unknown and wilda breeds dreadful doubts. Oft fire is without smoke, and peril without show. Therefore your stroke, Sir Knight, withhold till further trial made. Ah, lady, said he, shame were to revoke degrees the forward footing for an hidden shade. Virtue gives herself light, through darkness for to wade. 13. Yea, but quoth she, the peril of this place I better wot than you, though now too late to wish you back ye return with foul disgrace. Yet Wystone warns, vilest foot is in the gate, to stay the step, ere forced to retrate. This is the wandering wood, degrees this error's den a monster vile, whom God and man does hate, therefore I read beware. Fly, fly, quoth then the fearful dwarf, this is no place for living men. 14. But full of fire and greedy hardiment, the youthful knight could not for aught be stayed, but forth unto the darksome hole he went and looked in. His glistering armor made a little glooming light, much like a shade, by which he saw the ugly monster degrees plain, half like a serpent horribly displayed. But t'each other half did woman's shape retain, most loathsome, filthy, foul, and full of vile disdain. 15. And as she lay upon the dirty ground, her huge long tail her den all overspurred, yet was in knots and many bots upwound, pointed with mortal sting. Of her there bred degrees 1,000 young ones, which she daily fed, sucking upon her poisonous dugs, each one of sundry shapes, yet all ill-favored. Soon as that uncouth light upon them shone, into her mouth they crept, and suddain all were gone. 16. Their dam upstart, out of her den effrayed, and rushed forth, hurling her hideous tail about her cursed head, whose folds displayed were stretched now forth at length without entrail. She looked about, and seeing one in mail armed to point, degrees sought baccy to turn again. For light she hated as the deadly bale, I want in desert darkness to remain, where plain none might her see, nor she see any plain. 17. Which when the valiant elf degrees perceived 500, he leapt as lion fierce upon the flying prey, and with his trenchant blade her boldly kept from turning baccy, and forced her to stay. Therewith in rag 500 she loudly gan to bray, and turning fierce, her speckled tail advanced, threatening her angry sting, him to dismay. Who not aghast his mighty hand and haunced, the stroke down from her head unto her shoulder glaunced. 18. Much daunted with that dint, her sense was dazzed, yet kindling rage, herself she gathered round, and all ataunce her beastly body raised with doubled forces high above the ground. Though wrapping up her wreath stern errand, leapt fierce upon his shield, and her huge train all suddenly about his body wound, that hand or foot to stir he strove in vain. God help the man so wrapped in error's endless train. 19. His lady, sad to see his sore constraint, cried out, Now, Sir Knight, show what ye be, add faith unto your force, and be not faint, strangle her, else she sure will strangle thee. That when he heard, in great perplexity, his gall did grate for grief degrees and high disdain, and knitting all his force got one hand free, wherewith he gripped her gorge with so great pain, that soon to loose her wicked bands did her constrain. 20. Therewith she spewed out of her filthy maw a floud of poison horrible and blacky, full of great lumps of flesh and gobbets raw, which stunk so vilely, that it forced him slacky his grasping hold, and from her turn him backy. Her vomit full of books degrees and papers was, with loathly frogs and toads, which eyes did lackey, and creeping sought way in the weedy graws, her filthy parbrake all the place defiled has. 21. As when old father Nilus degrees gins to swell with timely pride above the Egyptian vale, his fatty waves do fertile slime out well, and overflow each plain and lowly dale. But when his later spring gins to avil, huge heaps of mud he leaves, wherein there breed 10,000 kinds of creatures, partly male and partly female of his fruitful seed, such ugly monstrous shapes elsewhere may no man read. 22. The same so sore annoyed has the knight, that well nigh choked with the deadly stink, his forces fail, ne can no longer fight. Whose courage when the fiend perceived 500 to shrink, she poured forth out of her hellish sink her fruitful cursed spawn of serpents small, deformed monsters, foul and blacky as in key, with swarming all about his legs did crawl, and him encumbered sore, but could not hurt at all. 23. As gentle shepherd degrees in sweet eventide, when ruddy Phoebus gins to welk in west, high on an hill, his flock to view and wide, marks which do bite their hasty supper best. A cloud of Cumbrew's gnats do him molest, all striving to infix their feeble stings, that from their annoyance he no where can rest. But with his clownish hands their tender wings he brusheth oft, and oft doth mar their murmurings. 24. Thus ill bestead, degrees and fearful more of shame, than of the certain peril he stood in, half furious unto his foe he came, resolve 500 in mind all suddenly to win, or soon to lose, before he once would lin and strook at her with more than manly force, that from her body full of filthy sin, he raft her hateful head without remorse. A stream of coal-black blood forth gushed from her course. 25. Her scattered brood, degrees soon as their parent dear they saw so rudely falling to the ground, groaning full deadly, all with troublous fear, gathered themselves about her body round, weening their wonted entrance to have found at her wide mouth. But being there withstood they flocked all about her bleeding wound, and sucked up their dying mother's blood, making her death their life, and eke her hurt their good. 26. That detestable sight him much amazed, to see unkindly imps, of heaven accursed, devour their dam, on whom while so he gazed, having all satisfied their blouty thirst, their bellies swalny he saw with fullness burst, and bowels gushing forth. Well were the end of such as drunk her life, the which them nursed, degrees now needeth him no lenger labour spend, his foes have slain themselves, with whom he should contend. 27. His lady seeing all that chanced, from far approcht and hast to greet his victory, and said, Fair knight, born under happy star, degrees who see your vanquished foes before you lie, well worthy be you of that armory, degrees wherein ye have great glory won this day, and prove 500 your strength on a strong enemy your first adventure. Many such I pray, and henceforth ever wish that like succeed it may. Degrees. 28. Then mounted he upon his steed again, and with the lady backward sought to wend. That path he kept which beaten was most plain, ne ever would to any by way bend, but still did follow one unto the end, the which at last out of the wood them brought. So forward on his way, with God to friend, degrees he passed forth, and new adventure sought, long way he travelled before he heard of aught. 29. At length they chanced to meet upon the way an aged sire, degrees in long blacky weeds icklad, his feet all bare, his beard all hoary grey, and by his belt his book he hanging had. Sober he seemed, and very sagely sad. And to the ground his eyes were lowly bent, simple in show, and void of malice bad, and all the way he prayed as he went, and often knocked his breast, as one that did repent. 30. He fair the knight saluted, louting low, who fair him quited as that courteous was, and after asked him if he did know of strange adventures which abroad did paw. Ah, my dear son, quoth he, how should, alas, silly old man that lives in hidden cell, bidding his beads all day for his trespass, tidings of war and worldly trouble tell? With holy father sits, not with such things to mell. 31. But if of danger which hereby doth dwell, and homebred evil ye desire to hear, of a strange man I can you tidings tell, that wasteth all this country far and near. Of such, said he, I chiefly do inquire, and shall you well reward to show the place, in which that wicked wight his days doth wear, for to all knighthood it is foul disgrace, that such a cursed creature lives so long a space. 32. Far hence, quoth he, in wastful wilderness his dwelling is, by which no living wight may ever pass, but thorough great distress. Now, said the lady drawth toward night, and well I wot, that of your later fight ye all forwearied be. For what so strong, but wanting rest will also want of might. The sun that measures heaven all day long, at night doth bait his steeds the ocean waves among. 33. Then with the sun take, sir, your timely rest, and with new day new work at once begin, untroubled night they say gives counsel best. Right well, sir knight, ye have advised been, quoth then that aged man, the way to win is wisely to advise. Now day is spent, therefore with me ye may take up your degrees for this same night. The knight was well content, so with that godly father to his home they went. 34. A little lowly hermitage it was, down in a dale, hard by a forest side, far from resort of people, that did pass in travel to and fro. A little wide degrees there was an holy chapel edified, wherein the hermite duly wont to say his holy things each morn and eventide. Thereby a crystal stream did gently play, which from a sacred fountain welled forth alway. 35. Arrived there, the little house they fill, ne look for entertainment, where none was. Rest is their feast, and all things at their will, the noblest mind the best contentment has. With fair discourse the evening so they paw, for that old man of pleasing words had store, and well could file his tongue as smooth as glass. He told of saints and popes, and evermore he strode an Ave Mary degrees after and before. 36. The drooping night thus creepeth on them fast, and the sad humor degrees loading their eyelids as messenger of Morpheus degrees on them cast sweet slombering dew, the which to sleep them bids. Unto their lodgings then his guests he rids, where when all drowned in deadly sleep he finds, he to this study goes, and there, amids his magic books and arts degrees of sundry kinds, he seeks out mighty charms to trouble sleepy minds. 37. Then choosing out few words most horrible, let none them read, thereof did verses frame, with which and other spells like terrible. He bade awake blacky Pluto's grisly dame, degrees and cursed heaven, and spake reproachful shame of highest God, the Lord of life and light. A bold bad man, that dar 500 to call by name great Gorgon, degrees prince of darkness and dead night, at which Cocytus degrees quakes, and Styx is put to flight. 38. And forth he called out of deep darkness dread legions of sprites, degrees the which like little flies fluttering about his ever-damned he d, await whereto their service he applies, to aid his friends or fray his enemies. Of those he chose degrees out two, the falsest two, and fittest for to forge true-seeming lies, the one of them he gave a message to, the other by himself stayed other work to do. 39. He making speedy way through spursed air, and through the world of waters wide and deep, to Morpheus' house doth hastily repair. Amid the bowels of the earth full steep, and lo, where dawning day doth never peep, his dwelling is. There Tethys degrees his wet bed doth ever wash, and Cynthia degrees still doth steep in silver dew his ever-drooping he d, whiles sad night over him her mantle black doth spread. 40. Whose double gates degrees he findeth locked fast, the one fair fram 500 of burnished ivory, the other all with silver overcast, and wakeful dogges before them far do lie, watching to banish care their enemy, who oft is wont to trouble gentle sleep. By them the sprite doth pass in quietly, and unto Morpheus comes, whom drowned deep in drowsy fit he finds. Of nothing he takes keep. 41. And more, to lull him in his slumber soft, degrees a trickling stream from high rock tumbling down, and ever drizzling rain upon the loft, mixed with a murmuring wind, much like the sound of swarming bees, did cast him in a swoon, no other noise, nor people's troublous cries, as still or want Tiani the walled town might there be heard. But careless quiet lies, wrapped in eternal silence far from enemies. 42. The messenger approaching to him spake, but his wast words returned to him in vain, so sound he slept, that naught maught him awake. Then rudely he him thrust, and pushed with pain where it he gan to stretch. But he again shook him so hard, that forced him to speak. As one then in a dream, whose drier brain degrees is tossed with troubled sights and fancies weak, he mumbled soft, but would not all degrees his silence break. 43. The sprite then gan more boldly him to wake, and threatened unto him the dreaded name of Hecate degrees. Whereat he gan to quake, and lifting up his lumpish head, with blame half angry asked him, for what he came. Hither, quoth he, me Archimago sent. He that the stubborn sprites can wisely tame, he bids thee to him send for his intent a fit false dream, that can delude the sleeper's scent. 44. The god obeyed, and calling forth straightway a diverse dream out of his prison dark, delivered it to him, and down did lay his heavy head, devoid of careful cark, whose senses all were straight benumbed and stark. He backy returning by the ivory door, remounted up as light as cheerful lark, and on his little wings the dream he bore in hast unto his lord, where he him left afore. 45. Who all this while with charms and hidden arts had made a lady of that other sprite, and fram 500 of liquid air her tender parts so lively, and so like in all men's sight, that weaker sense it could have ravished quite, the maker self, for all his wondrous wit, was nigh beguiled with so goodly sight. Her all in white he clad, and over it cast a black stole, most like to seem degrees for unifit. 46. Now when that idle dream was to him brought, unto that elfin knight he bade him fly, where he slept soundly void of evil thought, and with false shows abuse his fantasy, in sort as he him schooled privily, and that new creature, born without her due degrees full of the maker's guile, with usage sly he taught to imitate that lady true, whose semblance she did carry under feigned hue. 47. Thus well instructed, to their work they hast, and coming where the knight in slumber lay, the one upon his hardy head him plast, and made him dream of loves and lustful play, that nigh his manly heart did melt away, bathed in wanton blies and wicked joy, then seemed him his lady by him lay, and to him plained, how that false-winged boy her chaste heart had subdued, to learn dame pleasure's toy. 48. And she herself of beauty so Faerie Queene, fair Venus degrees seemed unto his bed to bring her, whom he waking evermore did ween to be the chastest flower, that I did spring on earthly branch, the daughter of a king, now a loose lemon to vile service bound. And eke the graces degrees seemed all to sing, hymen degrees dancing all around, whilst freshest Flora degrees her with ivy guirland crowned. 49. In this great passion of unwanted lust, or wanted fear of doing aught amies, he started up, as seeming to mistrust some secret ill or hidden foe of his. Lo there before his face his lady is, under Blake stole hiding her baited hook, and as half blushing offered him to kiss with gentle blandishment and lovely look, most like that virgin true, which for her knight him took. 50. All clean dismayed to see so uncouth sight, and half enraged at her shameless guise, he thought of slaying her in his fierce despite. But hasty heat tempering with sufferance wise, he stayed his hand, and gan himself advise to prove his sense, degrees, and tempt her feigned truth. Wringing her hands in woman's piteous wise, though can she weep, degrees to stir up gentle ruth both for her noble bloud and for her tender youth. 51. And said, Ah, sir, my liege lord and my love shall I accuse the hidden cruel fate, and mighty causes wrought in heaven above, or the blind God, degrees that doth me thus amate, for hoped love to win me certain hate. Yet thus perforce he bids me do, or die. Die is my due, yet rel my wretched state you, whom my hard avenging destiny hath made judge of my life or death indifferently. 52. Your own dear sake forced me at first to leave my father's kingdom there, she stopped with tears. Her swollen heart her speech seemed to bereave, and then again begun. My weaker years, captive 500 to fortune and frail worldly fears, fly to your faith for succor and sure-eyed. Let me not die in languor and long tears. Why, dame, quoth he, what hath ye thus dismayed? What phrase ye, that were wont to comfort me afraid? 53. Love of yourself, she said, and dear constraint, lets me not sleep, but was the weary night in secret anguish and unpitied plaint, whiles you in careless sleep are drowned quite. Her doubtful words made that redoubted knight suspect her truth. Yet since no untruth he knew, her fawning love with foul disdainful spite he would not shend, but said, Dear dame, I row, that for my sake unknown such grief unto you grew. 54. Assure yourself it fell not all to ground. Degrees for all so dear as life is to my heart, I deem your love, and hold me to you bound. Ne let vain fears procure your needless smart, where cause is none, but to your rest depart. Not all content, yet seemed she to appease her mournful plaints, beguiled of her art, and fed with words that could not choose but please, so sliding softly forth, she turned as to her ease. 55. Long after lay, he musing at her mood, much grieve 500 to think that gentle dame so light, for whose defense he was to shed his blood. At last, dull weariness of former fight having erocked asleep his irksome sprite, that troublous dream gan freshly toss his brain with bowers and beds, and ladies' dear delight. But when he saw his labor all was vain, with that misformed sprite he backy returned again.